Welcome everyone, I'm John from Agility, and in this video we're going to be discussing the environment values that we're going to be using throughout the creation process. This is a very important video. As boring as what it might be, it's a very important video because we need to understand the values that we are going to be using through the commands in order to create our clusters, because once we define or decide on a value, that's it. That becomes the value for the remainder of the cluster, for the remainder of the existence of your cluster and other assets on the Azure cloud. So by understanding this up front, we can we are prepared to move forward and do things the right way. And this I've learned from our experience of setting up multiple clusters, so this is really a value add video. Let's get started. So I've opened up my browser over here and I'm actually pointing to a great resource for this, which is our cheat sheets, sorry everyone, which we published onto GitHub. And the easiest way to find that is to just search for cheat sheets or just find the Agility Hub entity on GitHub, and then from there you'll see one of the repos is cheat sheets. We'll also make sure that there are links in the show notes. Now you'll hit the main page, which will look like this, and then from there you'll have the table of contents, which will list all the cheat sheets we've currently published. We've only published 2 at the moment, but many more are coming. The first one is the important one though, Microsoft Azure Kubernetes setup. So if we click on that one, we've got a whole document that takes you through everything that you need to know in order to set up your Kubernetes environment on the Azure cloud. It is the print version of this video series. So the important part of this document or this article is the configuration details, and that's what we're going to be talking about now in this video. Alright, so these are the following values that you need to define and that we will be using multiple times. And we'll start by the resource group name. This is how Azure works. It groups all the items and assets together on the Azure cloud. So your virtual machine, your Kubernetes cluster, your Azure Container Registry, and various other assets, whether they be IP addresses, whatever, are going to be grouped together. So we need to go and make sure that we have a name for our resource group. And what we do is a best practice on our side is we camel case the name and we prefix it with RG standing for resource group. So in the demonstration of this video, I'm actually going to be using RG Acme Dev as the resource group name for our environment. Then you are going to need to know the location of the Azure data center that will host your Kubernetes cluster. And you'll see that I've got a link over here that if we open it up in a new window, it will provide you with all the locations that Azure currently has, and then you can choose which one you want to use for your Kubernetes environment. In my case, we don't, even though we have South African data centers, we can't spawn Azure, or we can't spawn Kubernetes clusters there yet, so we'll have to resort to the closest, the next best thing, which is Western Europe. And that's what I'm going to be using as the location for this tutorial for these videos. Next up, we have the Azure Container Registry. This is where we are gonna this is where you'll host all your Docker containers that will be used by your Kubernetes cluster. Alright, and the one thing to remember over here is that the name must be lowercase. So we would have liked it to be camel case, but Azure does force us to keep the name lowercase. And as a practice, what we do is we prefix it with ACR. So ACR stands for Azure Container Registry, and an example of what we'll use in this tutorial, in this video series, is ACR Acme Dev. And we do it like that so that in the event you want to create multiple instances like a QA and a production environment, then at least you can go and set up the naming conventions so that they are standardized across these environments. Okay. Next up, we've got the ACR's SKU, and it's basically the type of SKU that's going to be used for the Azure Container Registry. This will affect the pricing of the Container Registry if you were paying for it. Basic is the most cost-effective, Standard satisfies most production requirements, and Premium just adds on a bunch of additional features for large-scale deployments. So we're going to be using Basic for this video series. We're almost there. Node count, a number value representing the amount of nodes to be created. this node count over here. So we're going to default it to 1. We're only going to set up 1 node, but this is where you might spawn a number of additional nodes that make up your Kubernetes cluster. And then finally, you've got cluster name over here. This is the name of the Kubernetes cluster that you are creating. And the best practice, again, is to use camel case and prefix it with cluster. So for our video series, we're going to be calling it cluster acme dev. That will be the name of our cluster. Alright, the only other names that I can think of here that might not be mentioned right now is variables like IP name, which will be used when we create a static IP address, but that happens later on. For now, we just want to get our Kubernetes environment up and running, and these are the configuration values that we need to prepare for so that we can get to launching a Kubernetes dashboard once our cluster is created. Right, so that's it for this video. We are now ready to start taking action. Everything else from this video series moving onward is pretty much going to happen either in terminal or command prompt. So it's really going to get exciting now, but let me tell you this, the worst is over. Everything else now is just commands. We've prepared everything for seamless installation and setup. So everything moving forward is just going to be a good load of fun, and it's pretty much going to take a couple of minutes, and we're going to see our Kubernetes environment up and running in no time. Thanks everyone. Until then, cheers.